You can be disciplined and still feel average. And this is frustrating because you're showing up, you stay consistent, and you do the work. And you look around and it feels like you're not really breaking through. The reason some people keep improving while others stay average isn't just about talent or how hard they work. It's that they stop tolerating the old baseline. In this video, I want to break down why disciplined people stay average and what actually needs to change if you want to reach the next level in 90 days. Let's get started. Okay, so first of all, what we're going to cover is why discipline alone is not enough, how your old effort quickly becomes your baseline, and then how you could actually recognize that this is happening to you. Then we're going to finish with a 90-day standard reset, an actual game plan that you can take and make meaningful progress over the next 90 days. This isn't about shaming yourself, and it is not about trying to become better than everyone else. It's about being honest to admit where you're no longer growing. This is the core problem. What got you here is now your baseline. So I really want you to just take a second to understand this, the way you operate today, right now. Your focus, confidence, how you execute, your discipline, your output, your skill, all of that is the result of how you've been living the past 3 months, 6 months to a year, or however long. And if you've ever made an intentional change in your life and actually stuck with it, you know what happens. First, the change feels super obvious. You feel the growth, you start doing the thing, you feel that momentum pretty quickly. But eventually, that new behavior stops feeling like growth because it's normal to you. And this is where people misread the situation. They think that they're showing up every day and get frustrated that they're not improving, because it's not just discipline or effort. Sometimes it's strategic. It's the challenge that you are putting yourself through. You don't stall because you stop caring, but because your old challenge became your new baseline. So I want to give a real example. I started YouTube about 2 or 3 months ago, video a week. And at first my standard was just put a video out, right? Just get comfortable enough to talk on camera and put out a video weekly. I got to that point, and instead of just staying there and saying, okay, this is good, I actively sought out a challenge. So then my challenge became, okay, well, how do I actually get people to stop their scroll, to click on it? How do I come up with ideas? How do I compete with all of the different media that is on here? And what kind of content do I want to make? So that was a change of standard. Instead of just being comfortable on camera, it was, can I write better hooks? Can I package these in a way that make people want to click? Can I structure the video so people want to stay? Can I deliver that feels like something impactful that's worth someone's time? So that is the higher standard, and this is a key mindset shift. When you raise the standard, something uncomfortable does happen. You start to feel like a beginner again, and if you can notice this, it changes everything, because it shows you exactly where your next level of challenge is and where that next level of growth is. Why disciplined people stay average. Disciplined people often stay average when discipline is used to maintain a routine instead of raising a standard, and that is the trap. Discipline is powerful, but just doing the same thing and showing up the same way does not guarantee growth. You could be disciplined at repeating and coming back and doing the same things, the same routine, the same level of effort, and never really adapting. This alone is why discipline can keep you average if you're not adapting it to where you currently are. Because you show up, you do the work, you avoid chaos, but nothing in your life is forcing you to become sharper. Nothing is asking more from you, and nothing is really revealing that gap. So you feel productive, but aren't transforming. Consistent, but not changing. You feel disciplined, but still average. This is something that I felt many times, and it's a perfect example of career growth. So oftentimes, when we enter a new career or a new role, or we get promoted, What we experience right away is a new challenge. This is that time to kind of get adapted, right? And during that new challenge, what we feel is discomfort. And high performers understand this and they've been through it. Those that constantly find themselves restarting, what happens is they feel this discomfort, and instead of adjusting and realizing they have to adapt to the challenge, they look for something new. They feel burnt out, or they leave and they go find a new challenge, and they repeat the cycle and they stay stuck. But here's the other thing that happens. Maybe you understand this. It takes a while to get good at something. So you grow your skills, and then you get confident, and then you're at that baseline again. This is where it feels real good. You feel like you can run circles around peers, you're locked in, you can take more on. You can feel this. But if you don't actively seek that new challenge, what happens is boredom. It starts to feel like mind-numbing. You kind of hate your job. And then maybe you look for a new challenge and still have to repeat the cycle. But what we could do here is actively seek new challenges. Now let's go into signs that your old standard is no longer enough. You can look for this and identify and see what's happening in your life. You feel confident, but not challenged. You feel disciplined, but nothing is forcing adaptation. Your results look almost the same as they did months ago, 6 months ago, or a year ago. You're productive, but not making meaningful progress. This one is especially important, is if you notice yourself going through the motions, almost on autopilot, but instead of phrasing it as just being consistent. You're putting in the effort, but the effort no longer challenges you. And this is where it pays to be mindful, because this is a pattern to notice. Because the problem is most people, it's not that they want to stay average, it's that they don't realize it's happening. It could be uncomfortable to admit that your old standard is no longer enough, and that something actually has to change. And that is why many people avoid the truth. They would rather stay busy or stay distracted, and they'd rather keep doing the same thing than actually asking the question, is what I'm doing producing the life that I say I want? Okay, let's get on to what actually creates the next level. The next level requires a higher standard of minimally accepted behavior. And this phrase matters because it's what you say to yourself. The standard isn't just what you do when you're motivated, it's what you're no longer willing to accept. It's your minimum level of behavior. The bar has to raise. So if you want a different result, you have to ask a different question. Not just how do I do more, but what am I no longer willing to accept? You don't reach the next level by doing more. You reach it by creating a new and higher normal for your everyday, like how you show up every day. And it doesn't mean you change everything at once. It means you identify one area where your current standard is too low for the life you want. And then you raise it for 90 days. So a really good reflection at this point, you can ask right now and say, okay, am I operating at the level I want to or not? Is just ask yourself, if you were as focused and as confident as you could be, what would be different? And honesty matters here. Because a question like this identifies gaps. It tells you, okay, if I was as confident as I could possibly be, and if I was as focused as I could possibly be, what would be different in my life? And if you could answer anything at all, it shows you at least a few areas of possibility and something real to work on. Because sometimes we already know what needs to change, we just don't surface it and put it in front of us as something that we can actually tackle, a problem that we could actually take on. Because what happens is, instead of allowing ourselves to admit we're on autopilot or not operating at the level that we could be, there are so many routes to escape. We'll scroll, we'll rationalize, face these problems. Because sometimes avoiding discomfort of becoming the person we say we want to be is easier than actually addressing it. So let's shift it. What is the standard shift? It happens when you notice that your life is no longer changing at the same rate as your effort. And that's the moment when you're doing your routine, you're showing up, but nothing is really moving. At this point, you have two options. You can either stay in that comfort of your current routine, or you can admit that your old standard is now too small for the life you want. And at some point, you'll start to feel this, because part of you knows that you've outgrown what you're doing and the ways you've been operating. So what breaks the pattern? Now we are going to go on to the 90-day standard reset. To stop staying average, discipline is still important, but it has to be paired with three things. One, you want to raise the difficulty of the current game. You're going to need feedback that actually shows you what is happening and where you can improve. And third is become the kind of person who no longer accepts the old baseline. This is the practical framework, and I'm going to go into it a little bit more in depth here. So when we say raise the difficulty of the current game, a lot of people think this means working more hours or doing more things. And they're like, well, I'm so busy, I can't do all this. But it's not always about adding more. Sometimes it's about getting more from what you're already doing. For example, if you find yourself only able to focus for 3 hours at a time, maybe it's not working more hours, but first looking at those 9 to 12 or whatever your focus time is and asking, how can I make this more strategic? How can I put more quality of focus or effort in this time block? Or if you're someone that stays quiet in meetings, the next level might not be doing more stuff because that's probably comfortable for you. It might be just speaking up earlier or being someone that is bringing ideas when you instead try to keep them to yourself. It's practicing being visible. That is raising the difficulty. That is outside of your comfort zone. That is where you're hesitating. This was me beginning of the year, and then 3 months later, I've always been someone that's been working out, right? 5 days a week. There wasn't a challenge for me to get to the gym. What was hard was eating right. Like that was the shift, actually counting calories, actually paying attention to what I put in my body. And once I did this, things changed. I started getting the body that I wanted. What changed? What was hard for me? Where I had to raise my standard was around these boring things like tracking calories, staying in a deficit, keeping protein high, and continue to train with enough consistency to protect that muscle. So that made so much more of a difference in 12 weeks than years of working out, doing the same workouts with slightly more increase in weights. Next thing is get feedback that reveals truth. Without feedback, you can work hard for months and never notice that you're repeating the same habits with more confidence. And this is dangerous because it feels like you're making effort, it feels like you're making progress, but you're not actually getting better, and you could be making mistakes that are keeping you there as well. Feedback exposes that, and sometimes it's a truth that changes how you perceive the effort you're making. What gets measured gets improved. Recently, I saw this with singing and feedback. I was someone that wanted to sing better for a long time. And I'd watch videos and I'd do these training exercises and warm up. And I would do it pretty consistently, but nothing was really changing. I wasn't getting better. And it just felt like I was repeating myself after a while. And then within a few weeks of hiring a singing coach, like the feedback was specific and helpful in the way that I was practicing. So now instead of just practicing these scales, I was understanding what I have to notice to actually make a difference. So sometimes the problem isn't that you're working or you're making an effort, it's that you're not measuring what matters or you're not understanding the specific progress points. So you get feedback, you make adjustments to how you're approaching your practice, and then you take better action. This is probably one of the most important pieces. This is becoming the kind of person who no longer accepts the old baseline. A lot of people can do hard things for a season, but deeper change is when their standards shift so much that the old version of behavior no longer feels acceptable. That is identity, and this is where it becomes more than tactics. The real shift is not when you force yourself to do more, it's when you become someone who doesn't want to live at that old level anymore. You start seeing that old baseline differently. Your old routine starts to feel too small, the old excuses stop sounding convincing, and the old version of effort stops feeling honest. That is when the change really starts to take hold. Because now you're not just trying to reach the next level, you're becoming the kind of person who belongs there. So let's move on to the 90-day standard reset. This is a practical framework. For the next 90 days, you can do this with one area of your life. Not your entire life, just one meaningful area, one place where you know you're capable of more. Step 1, you want to find out where you're maintaining instead of adapting. Where in your life have you gotten really consistent, but you haven't gotten better? Where has it been too long since you looked and said, okay, where do I want to go with this? So this should feel like an area of your life that is on autopilot. It should feel like this deep knowing that you're capable of more in a specific area. Step 2 is to find the hidden bottleneck. Ask, is this a challenge problem, a feedback problem, or a standards problem? And step 3 is raise one standard for 90 days. Not 10 standards, just one. Pick one standard that would actually change the way you operate, because this is going to be meaningful to do day to day. It could be around your body, your work, your creativity, your courage, your attention, your practice, or your output. Now, step 4 is to track adaptation. Don't ask if you just did the thing. Ask what's actually changing. Are you actually getting sharper? Are you producing better work? Do you have better focus? Is the output changing? Is my identity, how I think about myself, changing? Because that's the difference between just moving and growing. I'll close with this. None of this means you're doing anything wrong. And if you stay to the end, I think you and I both know that this is not really about being better than other people. What we're really seeking is just that confirmation and truth that we're capable of more. That's the deeper thing. You don't want to escape average because you hate everyone else. You want to escape average because something in you knows your life could be more alive, more focused, more intentional, and more true. So the best advice I can give is this: be super honest with yourself. If you keep running from that truth, nothing changes. Our world is very good at numbing the discomfort of unrealized potential. There's always something to watch, something to scroll, something to buy, something to distract you from that feeling that you're not operating at the standard you are capable of. So I challenge you to sit with that feeling, not as shame, but as information and signal. You can ask yourself, where have I gotten consistent but not better? Where am I maintaining instead of adapting? And what standard would actually change my life if I lived it for the next 90 days? Then choose one, raise that standard, and live from it long enough to see your baseline change. I'm Rob. I really appreciate you watching this, and I hope to see you soon.